Good evening, everybody. This is Sister Candasiri. I think most of you know me. I'm one of the nuns, and I've been a nun for a very long time. I started off at Chithurst and then Amaravati, and now I'm living in Scotland. And this is where I am right now. And it's a gorgeous, blustery evening, and in the autumn time, and the leaves are coming off the trees. And it's very quiet. There's no traffic, just a little bit of wind. So I'm here and you're wherever you are. So welcome to the Buddhist Society Monday class. Apologies for being a little bit late. We had a few technical hitches, but hopefully it's all sorted out and you can all see and hear whatever you need to see and hear. And as usual, we'll start off with a short puja, and Imogen will arrange the screen sharing. And to start off with our light candles and incense, which are the traditional offerings that we make to the shrine, to the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha. To the Blessed One, the Lord, who fully attained perfect enlightenment, to the teaching which he expounded so well, and to the Blessed One's disciples who have practiced well, to these, the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha, we render with offerings our rightful homage. It is well for us that the Blessed One, having attained liberation, still had compassion for later generations. May these simple offerings be accepted for our long-lasting benefit and for the happiness it gives us. The Lord, the perfectly enlightened and Blessed One, I render homage to the Buddha, the Blessed One. The teaching so completely explained by him, I bow to the Dhamma. The Blessed One's disciples who have practiced well, I bow to the Sangha. Now let us pay our preliminary homage to the Buddha. Homage to the Blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened One. Homage to the Blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened One. Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one. Now let us chant the recollection of the Buddha. A good word of the Blessed One's reputation has spread as follows. He, the Blessed One, is indeed the pure one, the perfectly enlightened one. He is impeccable in conduct and understanding, the accomplished one, the knower of the worlds. He trains perfectly those who wish to be trained. He is teacher of gods and humans. He is awake and holy. Wow. Now let us chant the recollection of the Dhamma. The Dhamma is well expounded by the Blessed One, apparent here and now, timeless, encouraging investigation, leading in words to be experienced individually by the wise. Oh, let us chant in praise of the Sangha. They are the Blessed One's disciples who have practiced well, who have practiced directly, who have practiced insightfully, those who practice with integrity. That is the 4 pairs, the 8 kinds of noble being. These are the Blessed One's disciples. Such ones are worthy of gifts, worthy of hospitality, worthy of offerings, worthy of respect. They give occasion for incomparable goodness to arise in the world. So the traditional recollection of the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha, which we chant together as a way of bringing our mind to bear on what is most precious in our lives, what can really support us in a state of balance, inner balance and well-being. There are so many things that we can focus on that disturb us. The world is a very disturbing place. And so when we come together and have a puja, it's a chance to just really gather to bring the awareness to something that can help us in our lives and help not only us, but also our dear ones, those around us, and in fact, the whole of our society. So we're turning our mind in a very positive direction. And as you all know, the second thing that we do on these evenings is to determine the 5 precepts. Having turned our mind to the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, we go for refuge, and then we make the determination of sort of basic guidelines for our lives, just basic, simple guidelines that, simple as they are, they're very, very profound. Because they actually enable us to see the very causes of our suffering and our difficulties. So I think Imogen is going to make the formal request on behalf of everybody, and then I shall offer the refuges and the precepts. So this is your moment, Imogen, if you'd like to make the formal request.
Maya Maya Tisaranena Saha Pancha Silani Yachama Dutyam Pi Maya Maya Tisaranena Saha Pancha Silani Yachama Tatyam Pi Maya Maya Tisaranena Saha Pancha Silani Yachama.
So I'll repeat the Namo Tassa 3 times, and then you do it 3 times, and then we go line by line. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. I can't hear you, Imogen.
Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa.
Buddhang Saranang Gacchami.
Buddhang Saranam Gacchami.
Dhammang Saranang Gacchami.
Dhammam Saranam Gacchami.
Sanghang Saranang Gacchami.
Sangham Saranam Gacchami.
Dutiyampi Buddhang Saranang Gacchami.
Dutiyampi Buddham Saranam Gacchami.
Dutiyampi Dhammang Saranang Gacchami.
Dutiyampi Dhammam Saranam Gacchami.
Dutiyampi Sanghang Saranang Gacchami.
Dutiyampi Sangham Saranam Gacchami.
Tatiyampi Buddhang Saranang Gacchami.
Tatyampi Buddham Saranam Gacchami.
Tatiyampi Dhammang Saranang Gacchami.
Tatyampi Dhammam Saranam Gacchami.
Tatiyampi Sanghang Saranang Gacchami.
Tatyampi Sangham Saranam Gacchami.
Te Saranagamanani Te Tang. And now the precepts. Panatipata Veramani Sikapadang Samadhiyami.
Panatipata Veramani Sikapadang Samadhiyami.
I undertake the precept to refrain from taking the life of any living creature.
I undertake the precept to refrain from taking the life of any living creature.
Adinadhana Veramani Sikapadang Samadhiyami.
Adinadhana Veramani Sikapadang Samadhiyami.
I undertake the precept to refrain from taking that which is not given.
I undertake the precept to refrain from taking that which is not given.
Kame sumi chachara Veramani Sikapadang Samadhiyami.
Kame sumi chachara Veramani Sikapadang Samadhiyami.
I undertake the precept to refrain from sexual misconduct.
I undertake the precept to refrain from sexual misconduct.
Musawada Veramani Sikapadang Samadhiyami.
Savata Veramani Sikapadam Samadhiyami.
I undertake the precept to refrain from lying.
To take the precept to refrain from lying.
Sura Miraya Majapamadhatana Veramani Sikapadam Samadhiyami.
Sura Miraya Majapamadhatana Veramani Sikapadam Samadhiyami.
I undertake the precept to refrain from consuming intoxicating drink and drugs which lead to carelessness.
I undertake the precept to refrain from consuming intoxicating drink and drugs which lead to carelessness.
Imani panchasika padani silena sukhatinyanti silena bhoga sampada silena nibhutinyanti tasamasilang visottaye.
Sadhu, 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 sadhu.
So a very simple ceremony, ritual, that can have a very profound benefit in our lives, helping us to live in ways that conduce to a sense of self-respect. We can trust ourselves and we can be trusted. A very precious thing in our society to be trustworthy and careful, respectful of other beings. One of the things that makes it difficult to follow the precepts is when we don't really understand the workings of our minds, because any kind of speech or action arises in the mind, the thought, and we follow that thought, we say something, we do something. And so meditation is a very important way of learning how to attune to the mind and the activity of the mind. So what we'll do now is we'll have a guided meditation, and to really keep in mind the importance of seeing this as something we do to support us, to support a sense of well-being, to support a sense of dignity, a sense of self-respect. Sometimes when people come to meditation, they get discouraged because their mind is very busy and filled with crazy thoughts, which they suddenly become aware of. And it's understandable that they feel discouraged or hopeless, but I always encourage people to say, well, it's really good that you've seen that. Now that you've seen it, you can begin to work with it in a skillful way. So our meditation is about being present with the mind as it is, so that we learn how to stay present without flinching. If there are unpleasant thoughts, we notice them, we're aware of them. We hold steady. The chanting we did, the Buddha, the knower of the worlds, and I always like to understand that as the Buddha really understood what it was to be a human being, really understood how difficult it was, understood the mind when it was filled with lust, when it was filled with hatred and fear and dread and anger and all these things. These are things that he had experienced himself in his life, and he knew that they're just impermanent, unsatisfactory, and that he didn't need to identify with them. But he did need to be careful. He did need to hold steady when there were these more difficult mind states, to hold steady, to cultivate little by little a sense of inner calm, a sense of inner balance. So it's a kind of work that we're doing, but a very wonderful work. So in order to be really attentive, we need to have a good posture. So if you could find the posture that you like to sit in for meditation, either cross-legged or kneeling if you're sitting on the floor, or if you're sitting on a chair, that's fine. And for some of you, it may be necessary if you're lying down, if you have a very bad back or if you're not well. So the important thing is, if you can determine to be wakeful, to be awake, alert, attentive. This is most important. We're not meditating in order to fall asleep, not at this point anyway. So if you're lying down, you need to be particularly careful that you don't nod off, don't drift off. And if you're sitting on a chair or on the floor, try to sit with the head held up. You can sit with your eyes open, and this can be very helpful if you're feeling sleepy. But otherwise, personally, I prefer to close the eyes. But we try to maintain a position of the head so that if the eyes are open, we're looking straight ahead. So the head held nicely up. And just taking a few moments just to attune to the body, to be aware of how the body is feeling from the inside. So you may want to kind of move around a little bit, just sort of gently sway the body, just a little bit, find a nice, balanced, comfortable, upright position. So not tipping too far forward or too far back, or to one side or the other, but the head nicely upright, the body nicely upright. So it's an attitude of alertness, attentiveness, and at the same time, a sense of ease. So we're aware of the contact with the floor or the chair. Feeling of pressure, that's very obvious to us as we sit here. We're aware of the trunk of the body, we're aware of the head. We notice any tension in the face or around the shoulders or the hands. And take a little time to set the body at ease. Just breathing through any of the areas where there's a sense of tightness or tension, so that the face is quite soft, with no particular expression. We allow the shoulders to drop, the hands to rest on the knees or in the lap, however's comfortable for you. We're aware of where we are, the space around us, and any other people who are sharing that space, joining us for this time of quiet sitting. So whether we're in a house or flat or rented room somewhere, or in a city or in the countryside, people outside, traffic and so on. We're aware of all of that. We bring that into awareness with a sense of, this is how it is, and it's fine. So there's space for everything. The sound of the neighbor's TV or aeroplanes going overhead. We're aware of these things, and it's fine. And we're aware of the body, our own body sitting here, aware of its breathing. one of the most helpful meditation objects. The Buddha recommended as a universal object of focus for the mind was the breathing. So we attune to the breath. We're aware of the breath as it's happening. We're aware of the in-breath as it's happening. We're aware of the out-breath as it's happening. Each breath we attend to carefully, knowing how it feels, experiencing it directly. Experiencing also the moment that we're not breathing, the moment between the in-breath and the out-breath. The moment between the out-breath and the next in-breath. We take an interest in the sensations of the body breathing. A gentle, calming sensation. Breathing in, breathing out. When the mind skips off onto something else, when we find we're distracted by thoughts, plans, memories, worries, concerns about this and that, whatever it may be, we recognize that and we simply come back with a sense of friendliness, a sense of kindliness and infinite patience. Once again, placing our attention, our awareness with the next breath. Being with that breath as it happens, here, now. Just calmly setting aside all of the concerns, the thinking, the planning, the remembering, the sorting out of this or that. Gently setting it aside, making the breath the most important thing for us to attend to. Here, now. Breathing in, breathing out as it's happening. Can you enjoy the sensation of the body breathing? Can you relax with it? One breath and then the next breath. finding a balance so that we maintain our awareness, our focus, gathering the awareness with the breath, with the moment. And yet at the same time doing this with a sense of ease, a sense of lightness and joy. So that we're not becoming stressed or tense about the breath. Just the mind resting with this bodily process that continues throughout our lives. Try not to feel frustrated if the mind keeps skipping off onto some plan or worry or concern. This is what minds do. It takes time for them to settle at the end of a busy day. Time and patience and kindness. Just one breath. And then the next breath. As we practice in this way, we may find ourselves moving away from the sense of me doing my practice and more to a sense of breathing. This is the breath. One breath. This is how it is. The body breathing. Going to a close now.
Presumably your nostrils not boiling hot in any event.
Staying calm, breathing gently, calmly. A sense of well-wishing, a sense of kindliness towards this being here, towards all beings everywhere. May they all be well, happy, free from every kind of suffering. Thank you. One of the most important teachings of the Buddha is the encouragement to contemplate anatta, not self. And I find it interesting just how challenging that can be, because we're so used to identifying with our own minds and our own bodies. We're so used to being concerned about ourselves and about our practice, who we are, how we are, and so on. And yet the Buddha says, well, in fact, there isn't a self, there isn't a you, there isn't a lasting self-entity. There's a body, there's a mind, yes, that's true. But this sense of individuality needs to be understood and let go of. this is something we can have an insight into quite early on in our practice. And it, I've found, requires a lifetime of contemplation to really kind of understand what it is that the Buddha was pointing to and why it was something that he considered so important. Of course, the reason he considered it important is because it's one of the main causes of suffering. This preoccupation, this concern about me. I was reflecting, one of the things that some of you may be aware of in our monastic tradition, we've just completed what we call the Vasa, the 3 months of the equivalent of the rainy season in tropical countries. And this is a time where the monks and the nuns undertake to stay in one place, one location, traveling only if necessary, but otherwise based in one particular monastery, one particular community. So I've been staying mostly up here at Milntuim in a community of one, which is in some ways easier than a community of lots of people. So there's only one person has to decide things. Although, of course, as we all know, when we can still manage to create suffering for ourselves if it's just one of us. But in the other communities, there's more than one. Some of the communities are quite small, maybe 3 or 4 or 5 people. Some, like at Amaravati, very big, 30 or 40 monks and nuns, and large numbers of lay people. So we've just completed the Vasa, which is a time where we stay in one place, where we focus particularly on our monastic training, study the rules and have discussions about how to implement them in our lives, in our practice. And maybe also study a little bit the scriptures and look into those, and often have times for formal practice, times of self-retreat where you spend time quietly. And I've certainly been able to do that here at Milntuim, study the scriptures and contemplate the training. And for the month following the Vasa, we have what we call the Katina season. And some of you are probably very familiar with this, and others of you may not be so familiar. And I thought I'd like to talk a little bit about that, what the Katina is, why we have the Katina. Just so that when you hear this word, it's not like a foreign word that you've no idea what it is. And the reason I feel it's important is because it's very much a part of it's part of what the Buddha established during his lifetime for both the nuns and the monks. And it's a tradition that is carried on certainly within the Theravada tradition. And so since it's a Theravada class, I thought to talk about it so that you would know what it is. So it goes back to a time when a group of monks were traveling to spend the Vasa time with the Buddha. It was obviously very, very special to be able to spend 3 months living close to the Buddha, close to the teacher, where they could receive regular encouragement and support in their practice. And so this group of monks were traveling, and of course they didn't have cars or aeroplanes in those days. They would have been traveling on foot, and conditions are quite difficult when you're traveling on foot. And unfortunately, well, in a way it's unfortunately, the rainy season started before they were able to reach the Buddha. So they had to stop, and according to our rule, they had to stay where they were, which I think was a place called Saketa, somewhere in the northeastern part of India. And so they spent the Vasa there, the rainy season there, as a group. living and practicing together, contemplating their discipline, practicing, cultivating their meditation practice, and so on. And then after the rains finished, then they made their way to where the Buddha was, and the Buddha spoke with them, asked them, how they got on, and they'd actually managed very well. And what he did was to allow for the lay people to gather some cloth and make a special offering to the community. And so our Katina season is when, remembering that time, the lay people close to the monastery have a chance to come and make offerings. And they offer all kinds of things, but the focal part of the ceremony is the offering of a piece of cloth to the communities. So there's a piece of cloth offered to the monks community and a piece of cloth offered to the nuns community. And after it's been offered, then there's a decision as to which of the nuns or monks is going to receive the robe that has been made. So part of this is that the cloth is offered, and then the community make it into a robe. And this robe has to be dyed, it has to be cut, it has to be sewn, completed and offered before the following dawn. So there's not a lot of time. And these robes are quite complicated. And I don't know if any of you have actually looked at the robes, but they're made in the kind of paddy field design. So it takes quite a bit of work to kind of calculate how to sew it and make it into a robe. And so in all of the monasteries, each monastery, they have a Katina day, or they have a robe offering at the Katina time. For the Katina festival, there have to be 5 fully ordained monks or nuns living in communities who've spent the Vasa together. And that's not always possible. So here we have a Katina time robe offering ceremony. And it's the same at some of the other monasteries. And however, when we have the Katina, all of the nuns or all of the monks have to get together and participate in the sewing of the robe. And so it's very much a communal undertaking. And it can be quite challenging, because when we start off, there's a very good humor and people are having a good time, working together, cooperating to sew the robe for one of the community. But then if you make a mistake, or if it goes on longer, then you start getting tired. And then that's quite challenging, just to kind of keep going, keep coming back, keep focusing on the work of sewing the robe in order to complete it before the following dawn. So we have most years when the nuns are making the robe set Amaravati, it can take quite a long time. Sometimes it's 11 o'clock in the evening, sometimes it's midnight, sometimes, in both the nuns and the monks communities, it's 1 or 2 in the morning before this robe is completed and offered. But it's the Buddha was very skillful in recognizing that to cooperate, to work together on something is a very important aspect of practice. And I think it's particularly important for us in the West, where there's such a strong emphasis on individuality, my bit, doing it my way, being the one to decide how to do it, being the one to organize it, being the best sewer. and noticing the bit that you've done. But when you're making a robe in a group of people, you can't do that. There's no space for the one expert. We all have to cooperate. We all have to work together. And so when the robe is completed, and this is the robe that I was offered last year, and I've no idea which nun sewed which bit, and I just know that it's a very lovely piece of cloth that was offered by the lay community, and that the nuns got together and made it and offered it. So it's a chance for us to contribute to something without being concerned about any kind of particular recognition. We don't have people saying, "Oh, she did such a beautiful line of stitches," or "What a wonderful border that person made." It's just all part of the same project. Personally, I'm very interested in this because I remember years ago I was involved with preparing the newsletter, and it was at a time when it was very much we were still doing cutting and pasting. It was before the advent of computers and publisher and things like that, where they can kind of just move text around and put pictures wherever you want them. In order to make a newsletter, you had to, first it had to be edited, then you had to lay it all out, these bits of text, lay them out on the page, get them straight, and then photocopy everything. And it was a lot of work, very satisfying. But I noticed how much I wanted it just to be me. I didn't want anybody to help. And the kind of satisfaction that came from just doing the whole thing myself, even if it wasn't very good, I still wanted it all to be me. And I began to look at that and to see that actually that kind of attitude brings a kind of satisfaction, but it's very different from the joy that comes when we all work together on a kind of communal project. As some of you know, I recently stayed at Amaravati for 15 months. And during that time, they used to have every Friday was what we call a samagi day. Samagi means like communal harmony. It's a particular kind of word that is used. Samagi, sort of like working together. It's like the good feeling that comes from working together. So we'd have these samagi days. And on the samagi day, there'd be a work meeting at 8:30. And it was during the pandemic. So we were still kind of doing social distancing and all of that. So we, instead of meeting inside, we would meet outside, which was interesting in the winter time. We'd sort of wrap up in our outdoor clothes within the courtyard at Amaravati. And the work nun and the work monk would be there, and they would give us all jobs. And everybody would be there. Ajahn Amaro was there as the abbot, and the most junior anagarikars and all of the lay people, everybody gathered. And we would be given jobs. And you couldn't really choose who you worked with. We'd all be sent off to do some kind of job. And so there'd be kind of weeding hedgeways, there'd be decluttering. We did an enormous amount of decluttering because we were kind of moving things from one building to another. So a lot of work with decluttering, moving, sorting through things and deciding what to give away and what to keep, and everybody doing it together. And then there'd be a bell, and we would all gather for a cup of tea and cake. And it was just very, very nice to sort of see the community gathered in that way. And it didn't matter whether you were senior or junior or where you were in the hierarchy or anything else, or whether you were, the most brilliant, I don't know, craftsperson or what you were. Everyone just joined in with this very simple, mundane tasks. And it was interesting just to see the sense of gladness and joy that came from cooperating, and to notice how there was no space for individual ego. We just all did it together. So I always think that one of the most challenging things for people is working together. I've noticed with Buddhist groups that I've been associated with that people love to meditate, they love to listen to teachings, but to organize something, to get together and do something together can be much more challenging, because that's where this sense of self can arise. The feeling of wanting to have it done my way, wanting to be in charge, and not being able to give space, not being able to support maybe people who are a little bit less able to do things so well exactly my way, but celebrating their goodwill, celebrating their interest, their commitment, their enthusiasm, their good heart is a really, really important. And over time, we begin to see, how incredibly judgmental we are of ourselves and of each other. And we can see how harmful that is, how miserable that is. And so a lot of these kind of projects, these group things, can be an opportunity to recognize that and to begin to let go of it, not to judge it. Don't be too hard on yourselves, but to notice that judging mind, that critical mind, that kind of compares and contrasts. This one is good, that one is not good. And just little by little looking to the heart of each individual, being less concerned about their skills or about their deficiencies, and more concerned about their good heart. It seems that this is really what the planet needs at this time, actually. It needs our good hearts that can joyfully cooperate, even with people that we've never met before, even with people that maybe we don't particularly like, different cultures, different nationalities, different ways. Just learning how to make space for each other. How to accept, how to accommodate each other. And understanding, like the barriers, the walls that we build, understanding them so that we can gradually begin to allow them to dissolve. This feels really, really important. I mean, we talk about inclusivity, we talk about diversity, we talk about all these things, cooperation, nations getting together, people getting together. But are we able to recognize the extent to which very often we want to shut people out? I don't like him, I don't like her, that one's a bit strange. Can we gradually recognize that and just dissolve these barriers? It was interesting, Ajahn Chah came some months ago to stay at Milntuim for a few days, and he gave a talk in the village hall called People and the Planet. And it was basically about the whole climate situation and how serious it is. And over the course of the talk, what emerged more and more was just a sense of how vital it is that we learn to cooperate, to work together. It was interesting during the pandemic how, in a way, for a little bit of time, we were all sharing, we were all involved in this common threat, this common concern. Every nation, every country every group of people, every class, the rich, the poor, everybody was affected by this and frightened by it. And for me, it kind of gave a little glimpse as to what can happen and what needs to happen. So my sense is that during this time, we have an opportunity as Buddhist practitioners just to contemplate the different conventions, structures that we have that can enable us to learn about the barriers and to learn how to cultivate skill in dissolving these as a matter of urgency. So the katina, where we cooperate to make a robe, the pujas, where we cooperate just chanting together, blending with each other. So it's just one voice rather than my voice. And all the little ways in our daily lives where we have opportunities to work together on different projects in our place of work, voluntary activities, families, groups, really actually seeking out opportunities to work together, to be together as a community, as a little community, as a bigger community, as a world community. This is what we need to do. So I'd like to end this reflection there with as an encouragement, and I hope that some of it may be helpful to you. And any that isn't, please just gently set it aside. And we have a bit of time now in case there are any questions that anybody would like to ask. And as usual, you can ask by raising your real hand or your virtual hand, and Imogen or Wandu will invite you to unmute and ask your question. Or if you prefer just to write a message in the chat box, I'm happy to respond to questions in that way as well. So usually it takes a few moments before questions arise, so we can just sit quietly and see if any questions arise based on what I've said or on your practice or matters of concern, whatever you'd like to ask about. Thank you.
Dear sister, thank you very much for that wonderful talk. If I can just ask a very small but a very large question. I think I personally find it really overwhelming that the world is so incredibly fractured. There's nothing you can see where there's any consensus about anything at all. And not only is the world fractured, but everybody is so hostile all the time. And I suppose what I want to ask is, how do we manage that in our lives? I suppose we can bring things down to very small actions of our own and just try to not be hostile with our neighbors or our families or friends and stuff like that. But is there anything bigger we can do other than send metta to everybody, or what do you suggest? Thank you.
Thank you for your question. And what you've already suggested is already very big. Making efforts in our lives to be more friendly and kindly towards people around us. Don't underestimate the value of that. Don't underestimate the value of extending a heart of goodwill to people in far off places or nearby. Also, I think it's important to realize that to actually question where your view of the world comes from, because my sense is that our sense of what's happening in the world is through the media, through TV, radio, through newspapers. That's how we learn about the world. And what I've noticed is that there's a very strong tendency to focus on the difficult things, the frightening things, the dangerous things, the confusing things, and much less interest on focusing on the really good things that are happening in the world. And there's a newspaper called Positive News, which is a very slender little newspaper that comes out, I think, every month or something. But I don't think that's, I mean, it's a lovely idea, but I think there's an awful lot more good that's happening in the world than we're actually hearing about. So what I would really strongly encourage is that you challenge that perception of things being so fractured and so difficult. And remember that there are countless other people who are like attending, practicing meditation. There's a huge interest in meditation now. There's an enormous number of really positive initiatives, people getting together to support people less well off than themselves, either physically or in terms of deprivation and so on. And to try to focus on them, use those kind of images and recollections just to support a lifting up of the heart. It's really important that we do this because, as I was saying the other day, we had a meditation day here and someone was asking a similar question. And I said, the world needs happy people. And we might think, well, if I'm concerned about my own happiness, isn't that really selfish? Isn't that really irresponsible? What about all these people who are suffering? Is my misery and despair going to really solve anything? And I would suggest that probably it's not going to do very much good. In misery and despair, hostility, ill will, these are like diseases, they spread. Whereas a calm, peaceful, happy heart also can spread in a positive way. So it's not to deny the seriousness of the situation in the world right now, that we hear about, not to deny that, and very serious, very frightening. But we don't need to be overwhelmed by that. So beginning with your own heart, keeping your own heart calm and bright, celebrating the opportunity you have to hear and contemplate the teachings of the Buddha, to practice according to the teachings of the Buddha, to be reminded, to be encouraged, to be present, to be aware, to be alert, attentive, to live in a responsible, careful way, to be kind, and to find joy in that. So these are a few thoughts that come to mind. It might not seem very much, but I think we shouldn't underestimate it. We should realize that what we hear through the media is a very, very, very biased, very lopsided, and that there's a lot more good out there and a lot more harmony out there than we hear about. So I hope you find that helpful and encouraging.
Yes, thank you very much, Sister.
Is there anything else anybody would like to ask about or comment? Any comments? And I think sometimes, those of us who live in very comfortable situations, where we have enough to eat, where we can afford to keep warm in the wintertime, where we're not in situations of violence or terrible deprivation, and we're reasonably healthy, there can be a slight sense of feeling guilty about this, and that we don't deserve it, and that we feel uncomfortable when we consider the people who are obviously not in such fortunate circumstances. But I think it can be helpful just to, like the Buddha's teachings talk about, kind of like the vastness of existence, and the fact that we've been around for countless lifetimes, and we've probably had some really pretty difficult lifetimes, and right now we happen to be enjoying a fortunate lifetime. And so his encouragement, to keep cultivating wholesomeness in the heart, to keep doing good things, not to feel guilty or embarrassed or bad or selfish about our position, but more just to enjoy it. It's okay to enjoy, a sense of good fortune. It's okay to enjoy physical comfort if we're fortunate enough to have it. And it's okay to support and help people that we know of, that we come across, who are maybe not such fortunate circumstances. If we have an opportunity to do good, to help others, then it's really good to take advantage of that, to do that. But really not to allow ourselves to get caught into a state of misery, because, as I said, that doesn't help anybody. Just to repeat, the world needs happy people, peaceful, happy people. It's all right to be peaceful and happy. And, everybody experiences suffering at some point. So we're not always peaceful and happy. And when we have a difficult time, when we're feeling confused and miserable, then, we use the Buddha's teachings to contemplate that. What am I struggling with right now? What am I wanting? What am I frightened of? What am I trying to control or to get? Where's the struggle? And really take an interest in that. Look at that. As I said before, suffering is to be understood. So we need to be interested. We need to be curious, not to beat ourselves up or feel that we're a hopeless case. But none of us is hopeless. Just need to look in the right place with the right attitude. See this lifetime that we each of us has as an opportunity to learn. And to learn as much as we can about the human predicament, as much as we can about these minds and bodies, as much as we can about the sense of self, the ego, so that we can actually let it go and not be confused and upset by it. So really take advantage of this lifetime. See it as something very, very precious opportunity that we have. Do as much good as you can, but also don't forget to do good to yourself. And sometimes we can wear ourselves out with good works, completely exhaust ourselves and feel resentful and upset because nobody else is supporting us. Well, that's not helpful. So we take an interest in that. See this life as an opportunity to learn and to do as much good as we can. And sometimes life will be wonderful, and sometimes it'll be horrible. It's just how it is for all of us. Anything else anybody would like to ask? What we can do, because I have 5 to 8, what we can do now is we can chant the Buddha's words on loving kindness, which many of you will be familiar with. And this is the most powerful and most complete teaching. You know, when you really contemplate the words, a lot of it is about just the basic how we live our lives, the precept that I spoke about earlier. And then sending forth, you know, wishing well to all beings. And then this wonderful phrase, by not holding to fixed views, the pure-hearted one, having clarity of vision, being freed from all sense desires, is not born again into this world. So learning how to let go, to keep letting go of our fixed views and the ways that we divide ourselves, divide up our society into us and them, and see it as just all of us, all beings everywhere. So if we can have the screen sharing, I think, did I say page 36? No, 37. The Buddha's words on loving kindness. This is what should be done by one who is skilled in goodness and who knows the path of peace. Let them be able and upright, straightforward and gentle in speech, humble and not conceited, contented and easily satisfied, unburdened with duties and frugal in their ways, peaceful and calm and wise and skillful, not proud and demanding in nature. Let them not do the slightest thing that the wise would later reprove, wishing in gladness and in safety, may all beings be at ease. Whatever living beings there may be, whether they are weak or strong, omitting none, the great or the mighty, medium, short or small, the seen and the unseen, those living near and far away, those born and to be born, may all beings be at ease. Let none deceive another or despise any being in any state. Let none through anger or ill will wish harm upon another, even as a mother protects with her life her child, her only child, so with a boundless heart should one cherish all living beings, radiating kindness over the entire world, spreading upwards to the skies and downwards to the depths, outwards and unbounded, freed from hatred and ill will, whether standing or walking, seated or lying down, free from drowsiness. One should sustain this recollection. This is said to be the sublime abiding. By not holding to fixed views, the pure-hearted one, having clarity of vision, being freed from all sense desires, is not born again into this world. So we'll finish with the closing homage. And then afterwards, if people want to unmute and say bye-bye, they may. Or if you prefer just to quietly withdraw, that's totally fine. So I'll turn to the shrine for the closing homage. The Lord, the perfectly enlightened and blessed one, I render homage to the Buddha, the blessed one. The teaching so completely explained by him, I bow to the Dhamma. The Blessed One's disciples who have practiced well, I bow to the Sangha. So thank you very much for joining me this evening, and I really wish you all well.